Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons video with myself and Sloth today. Evan Ferguson, he's probably he was at least one of the hottest prospects in the Premier League, especially in the forwards line that we've seen. And yeah, his career's kind of stagnated. It's crazy to say because he's only 20 years old, but it did stagnate due to injury. And now it looks like he's trying to revive that at West Ham under Graham Potter, who he obviously knows well. And yeah, it's going to be a really interesting signing. So this is all about how Evan Ferguson can be a success at West Ham and how we can make this move a win-win for both parties, and also potentially looking ahead to the summer slot, because obviously the deal is only a loan up until the summer, no buy option, no obligation to buy either. It's just a straight loan. So really, we've got 6 months to develop a player, which we might want to then buy in the summer, and the price tag could go up. So it's a bit of a difficult situation, but Evan Ferguson as a player, taking away the transfer fee or the loan deal it is, what's your feelings on Evan Ferguson as a football player right now, as we're recording this?
I think he's a fantastic prospect. And, as a striker already at 20 years old, like only just turned 20 as well, it's not a case of but I think people talk about him because they've seen him play for a few seasons, like he's, mid-20s, or we should be expecting more for him. And I think whilst, yes, the ceiling for him is incredibly high and he has been unlucky with injuries, a lot of people kind of neglect that from a sports science point of view. You don't physically mature and have the best footing biologically, even just from like an injury standpoint, and terms of muscle size, muscle development, until you're sort of mid-20s, and it's very easy for people to sort of write young players off. And we've been guilty of it as well on this channel at times, where you kind of go, oh, a 23-year-old or something, and you go, oh, we need to be looking a different way. But I think this is one of the moments where this player really suits how we play. It obviously benefits Potter because he knows the individual, and I think for West Ham it's an excellent deal. And we'll talk about the buy aspect, or the no clause deal, whatever you want to call it, in the loan. But I think that in terms of suiting West Ham, I think he's a fantastic player, and definitely the right sort of profile that we have constantly neglected to bring in.
Yeah, I know we're going to do a separate kind of transfer summary video from the January transfer window, which we'll talk about holistically. But when we're talking about the need for a striker, it was clear as day. Fulcrook's obviously got a long-term injury and injury problems. We know Antonio is going to be missing for the rest of the season. So really, we're looking towards Danny Ings as our only striking option right now, unless you want to go into the youth team, and Lucas Paqueta, who played false nine as well. But again, it's not his natural position. So Evan Ferguson fits that category at least. At least we have a striker that is a striker, is someone that wants to be a goal scorer, and, as you say, has the assets and fundamentals to play in a Graham Potter system, because I think that's just as important as the goals, because how many times have we signed a striker that hasn't suited the way a manager wants to play? So that's the positive of this deal. And we look at Evan Ferguson's goal record over the past few seasons. As you say, it's important to note he's only really just broke through. It's because he broke through at such a young age that people maybe think he's a little bit older than he is. He's only just turned 20 years old. And obviously the injury that he had, which we'll talk on a bit in a moment, kind of stalled that progress. And you can see here the breakdown of seasons. So really, he started coming into the Premier League in the 2022-23 campaign. He scored 6 goals and got 2 assists in the Premier League in 19 appearances in 2022-23. He then got more game time in 23-24 with 27 appearances and 6 goals. And this season, you can see here, he hasn't really played or featured much, just 237 minutes in 13 games in the Premier League and 1 goal. So his game time has been limited, Sloth. Does that concern you that he isn't really, we're bringing in a signing for January, but it's not someone that's been, regularly goal scoring? Say, we've been linked with other players that, I'm not going to mention the striker's name that went to Bournemouth instead, but we've had strikers linked with us in this January transfer window that have been playing more regularly and they're up to speed with the Premier League. Does that concern you at all?
No, to be honest, I think if you are looking at that, then you kind of have to bite your tongue if you talk about Jesse Lingard in a sense. An excellent deal for an out of favour player who wasn't getting game time and came here for the benefit of his career. And I think that's exactly what Evan Ferguson will be doing. He's clearly not fancied by the Brighton manager. Sometimes, you hear it so often about when a manager comes in and a player is not fancied by them and they're frozen out. Now, I'm not saying that that's what the Brighton manager's done, because obviously he's getting game time, but I think people just jump on the fact that he's played so few minutes as a negative, when really, as we've said, he's so young, he's developing, his game is raw, but the fundamentals are there. And I think it's something that the manager clearly just didn't really want to work with. He wanted someone who was more proven or a bit more suited to how he played with Danny Welbeck, with that physical hold up and the same sort of mobility, but perhaps more suited to his style of play. And we've already seen that they brought into Zimas, who is a fantastic young striker that we were also linked with. I think that's also played a bit of a key element in this deal going through. But as we've said, he scored goals at this level. It's something that I saw an interesting comment today about Harry Kane. People comparing Evan Ferguson, and Evan Ferguson has said himself that he would kind of compare his profile to Harry Kane. Well, at this point, Harry Kane was out on loan in the lower leagues. He wasn't scoring goals in the Premier League. And I'm not saying that Evan Ferguson is going to have the same sort of goal-scoring prowess as Harry Kane. But I think that when you factor that in, it kind of looks more generously or positively on Ferguson, because he's scoring at a Premier League level. And when you look at the minutes as well, people might go, oh, there's not a lot of goals there. But it's the overall play and, the fact he has got assists. To me, it really lends itself to the Antonio style where, he's not going to get 20 goals a season, but he's involved in so many goals and so much positivity in our play that it kind of negates that.
Yeah, I think my main concern or reservation about the deal, obviously financial situation aside, and the fact that we can't sign him with on a permanent in summer if he wanted to, is the over dependence on him over the next coming weeks. Again, we don't have cup competitions to kind of flirt with, so it really is just Premier League football for us to focus on. But my consideration would be that we're playing him or demanding too much from someone like him in this current setup. Also, with the lack of options to bring off the bench if we wanted to. Obviously, the Somerville injury as well is going to kind of raise that importance as well, because you're going to have to move the players around in that front three. So for me, I like the move. I think the player himself has a lot of potential, and he's already shown the potential, and now he wants to prove it in a club where he's going to be playing regular football. So all of those boxes are ticked for me. As you say, he's got his profile absolutely matches Potter's style, and I think we'll very quickly like the type of player that he is. The main concern I have is this, and it's the injury record. And West Ham's luck with injuries is bad. I don't need to understate that. But when you're having things like a cruciate ligament tear in 2024, he's had some ankle problems where he missed 7 games in December through to January this season. He hasn't really, again, it's not like Fulkirk, who had 4 or 5 really crucial injuries before coming to West Ham. But this cruciate ligament tear is something that does concern me. Is there anything here that concerns you, Sloth? Because I just know with West Ham's injuries that something will happen, and then we're going to be back to square one.
I think it's worrying from a West Ham point of view. It is that sort of thing that you mentioned. Historically, West Ham, the player would join, and as soon as they have a training session, the other ACL goes.
Yeah.
For me, though, I think I've seen so many players have these cruciate injuries in recent seasons and bounce back. and I've bounced back. You know, I know it's well, as Partridge, but it's it's something that players. Sports science has moved so quickly, and the treatment and the rehab for these injuries has improved so dramatically in a short space of time that I think people they read cruciate injury and they go, "Oh God, like that's terrible." And there's so many mitigating circumstances and degrees of severity in that you can't really get from the transfer marked image. And a player who has more than bounced back from their cruciate injuries is someone called Victor Boniface. He had a cruciate injury in both legs, like at different times. So it's not a case of it's a career ender or it's going to affect your pace, because it clearly hasn't affected Boniface. It's a case of making sure you recover from it, and as long as it's not something that you have hints that it's going to recur, I'm not too fussed. I think the ankle injury, I think there's perhaps a little bit more to that, in terms of him just not being fancied and them saying it's an injury issue. But you never know. I might be completely wrong there, but it's something that, to me, those injuries don't really worry me that much. This is someone who's going to come in and look to try and rebuild their career. If he gets injured doing that, then obviously, disaster. But I'm not too concerned going off that injury history.
What would you consider then, to kind of recap this, success for Evan Ferguson at West Ham? Because obviously he's only on a 6-month loan deal. We have no option to buy. We have no obligation to buy. So really, it's a similar situation to that Jesse Lingard situation, where a player hasn't played loads of football, is now coming in with a point to prove. Again, it's slightly different because at the time Jesse Lingard joined, we were pushing for Europe and top 4. This time, the season's kind of done. It's almost treating it as a pre-season. So Graham Potter's got a player that he can work with. Is it almost more of a benefit for Graham Potter to kind of implement his style and ideas around a player that fits that system? And, Evan Ferguson's success will almost be dependent on how West Ham as a team get to grips with Graham Potter's tactical flexibility and how he wants to set up in games.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think Evan Ferguson has to really look at this as a chance to really rebuild and build the same hype that was there 2 seasons ago. And if he can do that at West Ham, fantastic. Realistically, I think a lot of people are overstating the impact of no clause to buy for this. If I'm just being totally honest, as I mentioned, they've already got their replacement in Tizimas, hypothetically. But if Danny Welbeck stays, if he retires, if he moves on, then it does maybe create a bit more of a need for him at the club. But I think at the moment, he could well be on the way out, and West Ham can use that as a bargaining tool. If he comes in and he scores 10 goals before the end of the season, then yeah, he's probably worth every penny of the 40 million that Brighton will probably ask for. But I just don't really see, maybe it's the cynic in me, I don't really see that happening. Not because he's not a good player, just because that would be a really impressive feat. And I think when you look at the fact that he has a relationship with Graham Potter, and the players around him are of such high quality, then I think the reason that so many fans are cynical about that lack of clause is because they expect him to do well. We all want him to do well, but he's got a fantastic chance to boost his value here.
Yeah,
and that's the disappointing thing, I think, for fans.
Yeah, I also think it kind of doesn't tie us into like, if it was an obligation to buy after a certain amount of appearances, it doesn't tie us into anything in the summer. So there's going to be loads of players we're going to be looking at in the market in the summer transfer window for Graham Potter to build his team. Evan Ferguson's one player. There's so many different striker options that would be suited to Graham Potter's style. So again, it doesn't tie you into anything. And if Evan Ferguson does do well, as you say, there's no reason why we can't go in for him in the summer to try and get it over as a permanent deal. So yeah, I'm excited by it. He's a 20-year-old striker who's, as he's already shown an abundance of quality. And now he's coming to West Ham with a point to prove under a manager who he knows well in the process, and a player that suits the system. That's more important to us. You know, we're bringing in a striker that's actually going to fit the mold of how Graham Potter wants to play. So, yeah, let us know down below in the comments. How do you think Evan Ferguson's going to get on at West Ham? What would you consider to be a successful period for him at the London Stadium? And would you have included that buy option if possible? Let us know down below. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel for more content. And Sloth, till the next one.
Come on, you irons.